Won't cancel my internet unless you're unable to provide service? Okay. So, when I was living in the city, I had a contract with my internet provider, Rogers for my fellow Canadians. After a year in my apartment, I decided to move in with my then boyfriend, now husband, on a farm. A farm on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. So I called to cancel my internet. Me, I need to cancel, I'm moving. Them, interrupting me. Your service moves with you. You signed a contract for X years and it only ends early if we are unable to provide service. Me, you are unable to provide service. I'm moving to a rural area. Them, not possible. We provide service to many rural communities. What's your new postal code? I provide it. That's for town name. We have service in town name. Me, but I'm not living in town name. That's just my postal address. I'm living on a farm outside of town name. Them, repeats contract speech with the additional offer of an absurd buyout fee if I want to cancel my contract early without cause. Cue malicious compliance. Me? Fine. You know what? I would love high-speed internet instead of shitty satellite internet. When can you come? The install guy had to call me 3 times from the van. Twice because he was lost, and a third time because he was stuck in a snowdrift. When he finally arrived, it took him about 30 seconds to determine that there is obviously no infrastructure for high-speed internet. I offered him hot coffee for his trouble coming out, and he happily canceled my service free of charge and accepted my equipment return. Cost Rogers a 3-4 hour call-out when you count the drive, just to try to keep one impossible contract. Story 2. Parent says it's not our business what her son does on the community garden, so we let him get up to his neck in shit. Literally. Happened just a couple of hours ago. This story is so fresh you can still smell it. On our community garden, we get teams of kids from the local school come to help. And it's often the case that they turn up on a Saturday morning as well. They're almost entirely well-behaved, which is a good job, as there's not a lot we can do about bad behavior beyond a stern voice. Although one time a lad kicked one of our rabbits, so a girl brained him with a shovel. Rough but effective justice. There's this one lad who came for the first time last week. Don't know him, but we made him very welcome. He only lasted half an hour before storming off in tears, after his third telling off for spinning round and round holding a tool and then letting it fly off at head height. This morning, his mum, I assume, came with him. I saw him point out my friend and me, but he didn't ask to join in, so after shouting hello, we let them be. After about 10 minutes, he started wandering, and my friend shouted to him, "Don't go round behind the greenhouse, mate. It's not safe round there." Well, his mum had obviously been waiting for this because she went 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat, demanding to know do we own this garden. And if not, what business is it of ours where her son goes? We explained we just want him to be safe, and she replied that she's quite capable of taking care of that herself. Thank you. Fine, on you go. Off he went, exploring behind the greenhouse, which is not safe because it's the compost heap, which is very unstable, and the muck mound, which is a giant pile of horse manure we get delivered every autumn. By the spring, the inside is all nice and rotted down, and the outside is hard, crusty, and less strong than you think. After a minute, there was a crunch, a squeal, and I think we did very well to drag him out without saying "I told you so" or breaking into guffaws. He was absolutely black from chest height downwards. And although well-rotted manure doesn't smell really bad, it is very thick and sticky and slimy. His mum grabbed him without a word, and they headed for the gate. He started bawling as soon as the surprise wore off. My friend said, "Would you like some bin bags to spread out in your car?" And to her credit, she did say thanks when he handed them over. I wonder if we'll see them again next week. Story 3. You're firing me because the uniform you forced only me to wear flatters me? Okay, bye. My first job out of school was as a language teacher in a private school, and it sounds like it's straight out of a fiction book. I was employed to teach grades 6 to 9. However, because I was the only teacher for that language, the owner begged me to teach grade 1 to 5 when I had any time to spare. I wasn't paid for the extra work. I taught each of the classes I was employed to teach, twice a week, and the other classes once a week. Aside that, lunch duties were added to my work, so I hardly sat all day. The school had a preschool at a different location, and all the teachers there wore uniforms. The preschool workers, all females, were the only ones required to wear uniforms. I was the only female teacher on the grade 1 to 9 staff. One day the owner calls me to her office and asks me why I'm not in a uniform like the preschool staff. I tell her no one informed me about wearing uniforms in my department, and also the male teachers do not wear uniforms. She gets slightly angry and orders me to sew one with my own money. I try to protest, but I see there's no way getting through to her. My parents convince me to let it go, and so on. When she sees me in the uniform, she goes off about how figure-flattering the uniform is on me, tells me I'm trying to seduce the boys, and calls me a prostitute. She orders me to sew a new one, or don't come back. My uniform was not short, way below the knee, didn't show cleavage, nor was it tight. I ignore her, and she fires me a week later, while I'm in the middle of a class. I just packed my stuff and left. The next day, the principal calls me to tell me the owner is asking why I didn't show up that day. Duh. You fired me. She calls me herself and orders me to come back to work, talking about how do I expect the kids to eat lunch. Good luck finding a donkey like me to work for that pittance. I went back, though, but not without double my pay. I then quit the next month. Story 4. Boss says I don't know anything yet, so I do the absolute bare minimum. Some background. I started my first full-time office job at a corporate America hellhole a week after college. It was an industry I hadn't worked in before, and I needed to be licensed. The company that hired me, we'll call them Smith Inc., paid for my licensing fees, study materials, classes, etc., for me to become licensed. The total cost was about $500. It was a sweet deal. They gave me approximately 90 days, paid, to study a textbook and pass an online course. I didn't have to do any work for the company, simply study and pass the licensing exam. It was pretty easy, and I passed on my first try. My boss, let's call her Mary, was super excited that I passed, and I began training under an associate-level coworker who had just been promoted from the position I was in. The coworker, Jen, was super great and helpful. She began training me on 2 simple tasks that I could do. The only rule was if the client had a question specifically about their contract, I would ask Jen or forward it to my team lead. Well, I ended up getting an email from a client about their contract, and I video called Jen to ask how to handle. She walked me through it as I shared my screen with her. I wrote the email back to the client exactly how she told me, and she read the email before sending. A month goes by and everything is great. I'm learning and getting more comfortable. Then I get a really nasty email from Mary. She CCs my whole team into the email going on and on about how I cannot answer contract questions and how she's gone over this with me before. She hadn't. Jen was the one who told me I can't answer contract questions. Both Jen and I try to explain what happened and that Jen was the one who wrote the email. I just typed what Jen said and sent it from my email since the client emailed me and not Jen. Mary then calls the team up in a video call and goes on about how I don't know anything and I just started. And I really don't know how this industry works. And that answering contract questions is out of my job description. It went on for about 5 minutes. I say okay, and get off the call crying. The next day, out of pure pettiness, I simply do the absolute bare minimum. I don't know anything, right, Mary? I still complete all my tasks and everything that's required of me. Anything more advanced that I would normally try to learn with Jen's help? Nope. I just forwarded it to our team lead and said, "Sorry, Mary said I can't do anything outside of my job description." Work was much less stressful after I decided to listen to Mary, and what many others told me before. Don't do anything outside of your job description.